Health Guide. Please note this is to help you understand about the health of pigeons. Post-weaning program. The aim of any health program is simply to keep the birds healthy. Most fanciers don't want to waste time or money on unnecessary or incorrect treatments, yet at the same time don't want to compromise the health of their birds by overlooking any beneficial treatment. Programs need not be unnecessarily complex. Mistakes in health management in the long term cause teams not to achieve their full potential, and so for a program to be successful it is important that the fancier understands not only what he is doing but also why he is doing it. For practical purposes, the pigeon year is divided into various stages, and so what should we as fanciers be doing at these various times to manage our bird's health? The same bird at hatching, and at 7 and 21 days of age. Post-weaning program 4 to 8 weeks of age. Principal aim, to allow a controlled exposure to disease organisms so that the youngsters can develop a strong natural immunity to them. This is achieved by providing a stress-free environment and by avoiding the use of medication if possible. The routine use of medication during this time should be avoided. During the first few weeks after weaning, the birds are being exposed to a whole range of potentially harmful organisms. A youngster in a well-managed loft, however, does not become sick but rather through this exposure develops an immunity to the organism. Provided the youngsters are well in themselves, a low level of diseases such as wet canker, respiratory infection or coccidia at this time can be regarded as beneficial in that it reinforces the growing youngsters developing natural immunity. The use of medications at this time simply interrupts this exposure, with the result that the bird's level of natural immunity is not as high. For this reason, a youngster is only treated if a health problem progresses to the point where the bird is sick in itself, and individual bird treatments rather than flock treatments should be given. Flock treatments are only given if there is evidence of a spreading infectious disease or more than 5% of youngsters are affected. Health problems that appear during this time are categorized into one of 4 types. These are outlined in the chapter Weaning. For a youngster to mount a good immune response and, in the process, form a strong natural immunity following exposure to disease organisms, it must be stress-free. Stress compromises the function of the immune system. The avoidance of stress in the post-weaning time is also covered in the chapter, but essentially it involves weaning batches of youngsters together as groups, being hygienic, avoiding overcrowding and dampness, and ensuring that the bird's full nutritional needs are met. Supplementation. During this time, pink minerals, grit and preferably a picking stone should always be available. A water-soluble multivitamin, e.g. Multivite Plus, can be placed in the water for 1 to 2 days per week, while a probiotic, e.g. Probic, in the water for 1 to 2 days per week helps maintain a full beneficial population of bowel organisms, ensuring full digestion and assimilation of nutrients. Seed oil additives, e.g. Polyboost oil, can be used to advantage and increase the energy and calorie content of the seed mix. They can be used either by themselves or with a yeast. Garlic oil is of particular benefit during this time because it is not only nutritious but contains the compound allicin, which is a natural immune stimulant. Molting programs. Principal aim, to have a good molt, resulting in the production of a lustrous set of feathers, and to allow ongoing development of a strong natural immunity. This is achieved through the maintenance of a stress-free environment, drug avoidance, parasite elimination and a complete diet. Approximately 3 weeks after weaning, the youngsters will start to molt. The process is accelerated in all birds, irrespective of age, in February in Australia with a shortening day length. As this total replacement of feathers only occurs once a year, a new set of feathers must last the bird for its entire first year of competition. Poor feather quality compromises performance, and so it is vital that everything is done to ensure that the new feathers are good. Healthy stress-free youngsters molt quickly and the feathers they grow are of good quality. Conversely, birds that are sick for any reason take longer to complete their molt and the feathers they produce are not as lustrous. It is therefore important that the basic principles of ongoing good care already established in the post-weaning time and discussed in the chapter Weaning continue. During this time, medications are still best avoided if possible, the aim being to further strengthen the bird's developing natural immunity through low-grade ongoing exposure to various organisms. The parasites, however, must be eliminated now. Parasites. Internal parasites rob the birds of nutrition that would otherwise be available to them and compromise the molt. It is therefore vital that the birds are free of roundworm, hairworm and tapeworms and either have a low level of coccidia or none. A low level of coccidia is still permissible at this time because the youngster's natural immunity is still developing. Hairworm, roundworm and coccidia are all detected in a microscopic dropping analysis, and this is often the best time for the fancier to send in his first dropping sample for examination for the season. Tapeworms are not a microscopic diagnosis because they can be seen with the naked eye. The different types of tapeworm vary in size. The small ones look like white pieces of cotton trailing through the dropping, larger ones look like pieces of rice stuck on the surface of the dropping, while the largest ones appear as whitish squares up to 0.5 by half a centimeter either singly or stuck together as ribbons in or on the droppings. What we are actually seeing here are the tapeworm egg packets and, though not continually, they are regularly intermittently passed by infected birds. Many flyers prefer to routinely treat preventatively for worms and coccidia at this time of year, and unless testing is done to confirm that the birds are free of these parasites, this is a good idea. As some wormers can affect feather quality, for example panicer, synanthic, it is vital that the correct wormers are used. I recommend for roundworm and hairworm moxidectin 2 mg/ml, 5 ml to 1 liter of water for 24 hours, and for tapeworms moxidectin plus liquid, 5 ml to 1 liter of water for 24 hours. If coccidia levels are too high, i.e. more than 1 every second x 100 microscope field, then they are best treated. I recommend toltrazural coccidiocide solution 1 ml to 2 liters of water for 48 hours. Remember after worming for hairworm and roundworm that the loft must be thoroughly cleaned, as any droppings passed before treatment may contain worm eggs and therefore have the potential to reinfect the birds. Hygiene is not as vital for tapeworm infection because they do not transfer directly from pigeon to pigeon through the droppings but are instead carried by insects, particularly slaters. I think this is because slaters, when disturbed, roll themselves into balls, which the birds then mistake for peas. To prevent reinfection, it is therefore best to spray out the loft with permethrin solution. See section on parasitic diseases and the common diseases for correct use, the following day. External parasites must be eliminated before the commencement of the molt, otherwise irreparable damage to the feathers is done. Moxidectin, as well as eliminating roundworm and hairworm, also eliminates all external parasites that suck blood. It therefore clears all mites, including air sac mites, but has only limited action against lice. To eliminate lice totally, the birds need to be dipped. The preferred product here is permethrin solution. As all lice live on the bird, a single treatment will eliminate all lice from the loft until they are reintroduced with strays, deliberately introduced birds and late returning race birds. However, only a percentage of mites infecting the birds are actually found on the bird at any one time. Many live in the cracks and crevices within the loft. To prevent reinfection, it is therefore important that the loft is sprayed with permethrin. Medication. Many of the common drugs used during this time, including, as mentioned earlier, some of the wormers, affect feather quality. Antibiotics, particularly Baytril and sulfa AVS, and to a lesser extent doxycycline, Risfide and Doxy-T, if used during this time, not only interfere with the development of natural immunity by interrupting the ongoing exposure to organisms but also compromise feather quality, and so their use is best avoided. They compromise feather quality by killing many of the beneficial bacteria in the bowel. These are necessary for digestion and the assimilation of nutrients. Their disruption by antibiotics interrupts the ongoing delivery of nutrients to the growing feather within the feather follicle. Turbasol and other anti-canker drugs do not disrupt the bowel bacteria and so can be safely used. Supplementation. Any nutritional deficiency during this time also results in poor quality feathers, and so suggestions made under supplement recommendation in the post-weaning program hold true here. In particular, the birds need to have good levels of iodine, found in some pink minerals, for example PVM powder, and some vitamin/mineral supplements, for example Multivite Plus, in their diet for the molt to proceed quickly. Supplementation with unsaturated fatty acids, found in seed oils, aid in the production of lustrous silky feathers in birds, and interestingly also a glossy coat in mammals, and so their use is particularly recommended during this time. If disease appears during this time, the same basic principles are followed as in the post-weaning program. Flock treatments are avoided unless at least 5% of birds become affected. Unwell birds are treated individually. Those that do not respond within 4 days are usually best eliminated. Pre-race program. Principal aim: having allowed as much time as possible for the birds to form their natural immunity, it is now a matter of assessing what health problems are persistent and then using drugs if necessary to get the birds completely healthy before the first race. The veterinary attitude toward health management changes 6 to 8 weeks before the first race. Up until this time, apart from parasite control, medication is avoided unless the birds in themselves become unwell. Low levels of various potential health problems, in particular wet canker and respiratory infection, are tolerated so that the birds, through exposure to low-grade disease, can develop as strong a natural immunity as possible to them. In many well-managed lofts, the bird's natural immunity will be such that, when screened for disease in the last weeks before racing, none is apparent. However, As racing approaches, it is important that any identified health problem be eliminated. I recommend that before fanciers embark on their final long tosses before the first race, and preferably several weeks earlier, droppings and birds be brought to the clinic for a health profile. Any persistent health problem is then cleared with medication so that the birds can be completely healthy at the first race. For fanciers who are at a distance from the clinic and not able to bring birds to the clinic, droppings can be mailed in. Dropping analysis enables a check for worms, hairworm and roundworm and sometimes tapeworm, coccidia, E. coli, thrush and fungi. Dropping analysis also gives an indication as to the general health of the birds. In particular whether they are likely to have wet canker or respiratory infection. Presentation of a live bird enables a more accurate assessment of not only wet canker and respiratory infection but also of less common problems such as hexamida, a canker-like organism that lives in the bowel. Parasites. Before